Thank you. Representative Norcross.
Thank you, Chairman. General Cotton, we recently heard that the Sentinel program, or heard it, triggered the Nunn-McCurdy Act, indicating there were serious concerns of cost overrun. And getting less into the actual dollars and cents and time delay, we're about to hopefully approve a budget and some money that's going to go into to fund the Department of Defense. And we are facing increasing pressures to fund all our programs. We have had the three legs of the triad, incredibly important. If the Sentinel program continues and in the projections where it is going, it could come to the point that it almost becomes unaffordable in the way that it's laid out. At what point do we look at that program and say, do we go back to the drawing board, not so much to recapitalize our existing Minuteman threes, but the requirements? Look at a different way of that third leg of the triad. Can you comment on that?
Representative Norcross, thanks for the question. We have. So, in regards to three administrations doing an assessment in regards of do we keep a triad or do we go to something different, all said we must maintain a triad.
And I'm not suggesting that, but within one of the legs, do we look at it differently, not just replicate and update with the existing ones, but look at a different configuration?
Well, I don't know about a different configuration, and I guess I don't know what you mean by a different.
Probably not a good
configuration
idea
of
in
that.
open session, but
Yeah.
the idea of just modernizing what we have to make it more acceptable to obviously Father Time. But
Well, I can't
like
answer
the-
from this perspective, Congressman, as far as the requirements that we lay, and that's my responsibility as Stratcom. And then the provider of that capability has come back to say that we can only meet that requirement at a certain amount of time in which that needs to then be replaced by a more modernized system. So if that answers your question, and that's when I think we still must maintain an ICBM leg of some semblance that probably looks a little different than a Minuteman III.
So the cost factor, there's no price that we can put on it. We'll pay whatever it takes to get it in.
Well, I would hope, that the Air Force and everyone will be able to take a look at that and be able to come to some conclusion on how you can make that. But the requirement for the land-based ICBM has not changed from my perspective.
There's no question about that. So Dr. Plum, I want to throw it into your lane. Is it time that we look at that leg of how it is currently required and what we might do differently to bring in those cost issues? I'm not suggesting we do away with it, but do we look at it differently?
So we all have to be careful here because we're now in a Nunn-McCurdy breach situation, sir. But my understanding is that one of the requirements for the Congress, and this is Undersecretary LaPlante's purview in ANS specifically, and not ours, is to relook the requirement and look at other ways that it could be possible to do it as all requirement of the Nunn-McCurdy breach through congressional statute.
All right, then let me switch things over to an easy one. Let's talk about the electromagnetic spectrum, something easy and non-controversial. Obviously, this rears its ugly head quite often. We recently went through what the Department of Defense wants to keep versus what the cellular carriers would like to obtain. It's not going to get any better soon. What is your assessment, not of where we just came from, but where we're going to be in 5 years with technology, not only from what the cellular carriers might need for our private side, but what we might need as a spectrum, whether it's 3.45 gigahertz. It keeps expanding in different ways that we can get into the spectrum. Can you give us an assessment of where we are with that in 5 minutes or less.
Yes, sir. So I actually just had the pleasure of getting down to Eglin Air Force Base and seeing some of our electronic warfare squadrons in the Air Force. And I'll just say the value of Spectrum to the warfight and the ability to operate in these bands that we have carved out for ourselves is only going to grow in importance. And in particular, as we focus on China as our pacing threat, where they have been aware of this for a long time, we have to maintain what we have to be able to compete. EW in the Ukraine-Russia conflict is providing lessons for everyone and is being used every single day. We have to be ready for that. We have to be ready to fight our near-peer adversaries, not places where we just have superiority.
My apologies, I yield back.
Thank you. Representative Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here. It's been a treat for me to work with many of you on the dais out here. Got to talk to General Guillot about a week ago, so threw some questions at you then. So I'm going to